Hello, my name is JP Behrens, and this is my story Promises. This is currently featured in Fear Forge Spring 2023, available now on Amazon, and will be featured in my upcoming collection, We Don't Talk Anymore and Other Dark Fictions, currently scheduled for late March, early April of 2024. Promises by JP Behrens. The cottage in the middle of the forest appeared innocent, but weeks of careful research spoke of the danger lurking within. Matthias inched towards the homestead, careful not to alarm his prey. The door of the cottage slapped open. An old woman wobbled out, dragging a wicker broom behind her. She scanned the sky for a moment, then went to work swatting leaves from the stone walkway leading to the crooked gate and fence. Contradicting the testimonies of the neighboring villagers, a faint dirt path cut through the woods, proving people traveled past or to the woman's abode. He took note and resolved to discuss their lies further once the trial began. "Come out of there, Matthias. No reason to hide until nightfall or my midday nap. Let's just get on with your business," called the witch. Matthias gripped his pistol in frustration. How did the old woman know? Some demon-damned villager with too much sympathy and no brains must have warned her. No matter. If a fight must happen, then a fight there would be. He stepped out from behind the large bush and made his way along the dirt road. The sun still needed a few more hours before marking midday. Matthias reached into his pocket and clasped an old talisman for protection. He wore a cross at his neck, but not all of a witch's power was diabolical in nature. Some of their power came from the earth itself. The old woman, smiling to herself, continued her sweeping. In a sign of defeat, she said, "Why am I even bothering, eh? Who will come here once I'm gone?" She seemed to be addressing Matthias, but he was unsure of her intentions. Best to remain silent and not play into whatever game she intended. "Who warned you of my coming?" he asked. The old woman peered into the sky once again, as if searching for the answer. "Maybe the birds told me." Matthias followed her gaze, thinking it odd the birds would betray him today when they had always been allies in the past. Or maybe not. We will have time to discuss that and many things on our walk back to the village. "You are surrendering without a fight? Without begging for mercy?" "Magda Woodbridge does not beg of any man, not even my own husband, God rest him." Matthias bristled at the mention of God from the mouth of a confirmed witch. He withdrew a set of iron manacles and tossed them over the gate to Magda's feet. The heavy iron fell to the ground in a loud ringing clatter. "Put those on and come away from your homestead." Magda looked them over. "Iron? It would seem you know your business. Very well. I will need my walking stick. It is a long walk for an old woman. Back in a moment." "Hold!" Magda raised an eyebrow. "I would not have you leave my sight, trickster. Put on the iron and come with me now." Matthias drew the pistol. "Shoot me if you must, but I'll not march to my death weighed down by such ugly bracelets without something to steady my old bones. You are welcome to step across my threshold and accompany me if you wish." With that stated, she shuffled back up her path, dragging her broom along with her. Matthias growled, shoved the pistol into his belt, and waited. He knew the woman's home held power. To challenge her, awake and ready, invited disaster, and his pistol only fired one shot. A special bullet soaked in holy oils that proved effective in the past. But once spent, it took time to reload. Best to wait. Sounds of pots clattering, wooden chairs being dragged along the floor, and the strange rustling of old paper drifted from the small cottage. The door swung open, and Magda shuffled out leaning on a knotted old cane. She approached the manacles and bent down to gather the restraints with a grimace. Magda lifted the heavy burden, weighing both the metal and the implications. Before the iron locked around her wrist, she peered up at Matthias with a sly, devilish amusement. "Of course, I will only come if you promise to take the path back to the village. I am an old woman, after all, and can't be expected to stumble through the woods. I know exactly what you are, witch. But yes, we will take the path. Easier to keep you in custody that way, not because you ask for conditions of your surrender." "Good enough," replied Magda, the irons snapping shut around her wrists with a loud final click. "Then I promise on all that I hold most dear I will surrender myself and confess, without guile, that I am a witch. That I practice said craft and have done so most my life." Without another word, Magda opened the rickety gate made of branches and stepped onto the path. Behind her, the cottage began to darken and rot. The plants withered into nothing. The thatched roof fell inward in large chunks, exposing the beams beneath until the walls collapsed and nothing remained of the small home except a burnt-out hearth blackened with char and age. Matthias stood bewildered and glared at the old woman. He understood that if she had wished to fight, a swift defeat awaited. No talisman available to him, no matter its nature, be it esoteric or sanctified, stood a chance of protecting him from such power. Why did Magda Woodbridge surrender? Matthias walked behind Magda along the path, his hands resting on the hilt of his sword, a gift from the Grand Inquisitor himself, along with a pistol. The inscription, Avenam non pateris vivere, ran along the barrel. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. After a mile or so, the trail veered into the forest. The large oaks and maples filtered the sun through their leaves. Emerald light illuminated the path, but shadows gathered around the pair, hiding anything beyond a mere 50 paces. They came to an old bridge, twisting into the darkness of the trees like a giant wooden leviathan. Matthias stood at the foot of the bridge, unsure whether he should step on or go around it. Well, what are you waiting for? Magda asked. I don't understand. This bridge disappears into the forest, but I see no river. Why is this here? Well, from here on, the forest is mostly bog. Knee-high mud, bugs, snakes, all manner of wriggling thing. It is easier to cross the bridge. Is that so? Asked Matthias. I promise surrender without guile. I do not mislead you. The bridge itself is safe. I cannot say the same for what you carry within you as we progress. Ignoring the old woman's chatter, Matthias considered the bridge and took a tentative step forward. The wood looked healthy and solid, all held together by nails free of rust. Whoever built and maintained the bridge did quality work. Satisfied, but not foolish enough to believe the rest of the bridge to be safe, he prodded Magda forward. Let's go. I do not wish to be caught in this forest after dark. Do not worry yourself. You are safe here with me. Which I am safe here without you, said Matthias. But I am not fool enough to play with the godless forces you aligned yourself with when it can be avoided. Who says those things you fear are godless? The Church, the Bible, God himself? The Church, an organization where you can purchase grace and forgiveness for the right amount of gold? The Bible? Which one? I hope you do not mean the one rewritten by King James. He changed quite a few things to suit his purposes. That inscription on your gun, for one. As for God, I didn't realize you and he were on speaking terms. Lucky you. Quiet, witch. I will not suffer your blasphemy. What you call blasphemy, others will one day call truth. Matthias scoffed. Before he could reply, he glimpsed figures creeping through the shadows, blanketing the swamp. Hail, you there! What business are you about in these swamps? He withdrew his pistol. You'll not need that, Matthias, noted Magda. He shushed her as the figures approached the bridge. A tortured scream exploded from the middle of the small group. I have a pistol. Begone, devils, and release your prisoner. The shadowed figures ignored Matthias. He passed Magda and rushed along the bridge, not wishing to fire into the group and hit an innocent, if one existed. The shadows parted once Matthias came abreast of the scene, and light highlighted the faces of those gathered. Only one face amongst the others grabbed his attention. His mother's. She screamed out, and the others rushed around her. The baby comes now, Nora. You must push with the waves of pain. It hurts, she wailed. I know, dearest, but you must bear the pain for the sake of your child. Now push. Nora grunted, inhaled, then freed another scream of pain, determination, and release. The midwife sighed in relief. The delivery finished. She and her assistant tied and cut the umbilical cord. The baby breathed seconds later, between high-pitched screams. Congratulations, you have a boy. Nora, her face slick with sweat, smiled weakly and reached out for her child. Before he could be handed over, Nora's face went a sickly gray, and she collapsed back into the bed. Nora! The midwife handed the baby to another figure in the shadows and quickly attended to Nora. She is losing blood. Give me my bag. A shadowed figure handed a large bag to the midwife, who dug through it until she found the appropriate supplies and worked to stop the bleeding. Matthias stared at his mother's ashen face, watching the life seep from her. There, done. She will need rest, but she will live. Nora struggled to turn her head. My baby is fine, child. Worry not. Rest now. Thank you. You saved my life. I am in your debt. No debt necessary, replied the midwife. Not for you, dearest, but you will need further care to regain your strength. I will teach you what you need to know. Yes, teach me. I promise to carry on the traditions and knowledge of what you know, Nora said, if you desire. But now, sleep. The midwife waved a packet of herbs under Nora's nose. "My child," mumbled Nora. Sleep dragged her down into unconsciousness. Matthias. The images faded into nothing. Matthias gripped the rail of the wooden bridge. He turned his gaze to Magda, rage and heartbreak straining his already haggard breathing. "What do you play at, witch?" he growled. "It is not my doing, Matthias. The bridge reveals what it chooses. I have no power over it." "Move!" he commanded. Magda nodded and resumed her shuffled steps along the bridge. Matthias glared, angry at the witch for playing with the past, angry at his mother for the promise she made, angry at himself for forgetting what she looked like until the moment she emerged from the fog of the swamp. Were it not for the law, he would lop off the witch's head right there and dump her body in the cursed waters. "Did she keep her promise?" asked Magda. Matthias shook off his dark thoughts and refocused on his prisoner. "What?" "Did she keep her promise?" "What promise?" "To pass along the midwife's skills and knowledge." "Yes, despite what it cost her," Matthias mumbled. "I'm sorry. She does not need your pity, nor do I. You will pay the same price for your practices." They walked in silence. Only the sound of their feet stomping along the wooden bridge slats accompanied them. "What happened to you?" Magda asked. Matthias peered at Magda from the corner of his eye. "I was raised by the church." "So they taught you all about us evil-loving demons." "They taught me the truth." "The truth is a funny thing." "The truth is the truth. All else is obfuscation," insisted Matthias. "If you say. I'm surprised the church knew about the iron shackles." Magda rattled the restraints for emphasis. "The church was unaware of that weakness until I told them." "Ah, and how did you learn that, if not from the church?" Matthias walked in silence for a few paces more before answering. "My mother taught me. She kept her word, learned from the midwife, and in turn taught me." Magda nodded. "I'm surprised she taught you, knowing the danger it would expose you to." Before Matthias could answer, the sulphurous fog parted, revealing two people crouched in the knee-high waters of the swamp. He did not call out this time, only approached with caution, unsure whether the figures were real or another vision. "Matthias, you must drink. It will help you," said one. "But, mother, it is witchcraft. It is forbidden." "It is medicine, and I will not have fools tell me it is sinful to save the life of my child. Now drink." Once again, the older Matthias watched his mother and younger self from the bridge, but the scene did not soften the grim determination etched over his face. "But people say these medicines are unnatural," objected the young Matthias. "Only because they do not wish to understand. I will teach you, and fear will fade with knowledge, I promise." The brief vision melted away into mist, rejoining the fog. "She saved your life with her skills," said Magda, "and damned her soul for the trouble. For a mother, there is no choice." That choice brought the attention of the village, who looked to her as a wise woman until the inquisitors came. Matthias's voice turned bitter. "The village she once helped couldn't turn on us fast enough. I was lucky the inquisitor who cleansed our home took pity on a small boy. He could just as easily have burned me with my mother. Instead, I needed only to watch her die to avoid the same fate. I'm sorry. She begged while she burned, begged me to remember her fate, to succumb to hate, to remember all the knowledge she passed on to me. I did all she asked." "Yet you hate me, a witch like your mother." "No, I do not hate you. I pity you. You have lost your way. The fire will purify your soul and lead you into God's embrace." Magda sighed, exhausted. "Do you need rest?" No, I will be fine." "As you will." They walked along the bridge for a time, until Matthias spoke again. "How long is this bridge?" Magda stared straight ahead. "As long as it needs to be." The bridge twisted around copses of trees and tall weeds, forever disappearing into the swamp. Matthias hoped at every turn he might find the exit, only to confront yet another curve in the path ahead. Sounds of fighting echoed through the fog. Matthias glanced at Magda. A question flickered deep within his eyes. Magda shrugged with an odd calm. They took the corner, Matthias's hand resting on the hilt of his sword. The swamp disappeared and opened into a massive, packed dirt courtyard. Rows of men and boys swung wooden practice swords under the close supervision of a man clad in flexible leather armor. The dulled metal sword in his hand glinted under the light of a sun that never pierced the swamp canopy. Matthias remembered Hans Talhofer, master swordsman. A thick German accent barked orders at his students, and his sword smacked anyone who didn't meet his demanding expectations. Matthias found a younger version of himself in one of the rows. Years of training and many sharp whacks from Master Talhofer had carved Matthias into a hardened soldier of God. Matthias wondered at the vision, curious why this should be shown to him. At the monastery, little had differed from one day to the other. But when Thomas de Torquemada stepped out of the dormitory to inspect the trainees, Matthias understood. A cluster of monks followed in the man's wake. Fear and sweat dripped off of them. The Black Legend watched the exercises. Only Talhofer seemed able to ignore the man's presence, presenting a mercenary's disinterest. Torquemada indicated Matthias, and a number of monks moved to pull him away. The scene shrank and morphed into a simple stone room. A medium wooden table stood in the center of the space. Torquemada on one side, Matthias on the other. "So, Matthias, I understand your mother was the devil's whore." "No, sir." "No?" Torquemada asked. "Did she not practice dark arts?" "She did, sir, but only to help others, never to harm." "The path to hell is paved with good intentions." "She did what she thought was necessary," muttered young Matthias. "You admire what she did." "I admire her courage, but understand and pity her fate." "You hold no anger towards the Church for cleansing her with fire." "I do not. The Church saved her soul." Torquemada nodded. "I would test that assertion, young Matthias." "I promise to be fair and godly in anything you request of me," the boy replied. Torquemada chuckled. "Fair and godly are good things, Matthias. However, I would rather you be effective." The stone room melted into the fog. Matthias walked, his pace faster this time. "You are disturbed," noted Magda. "I was young and foolish. I, too, paid a price for my choices." Ahead, a man strapped between two blood-streaked wooden poles screamed into the darkness of the swamp. Matthias stumbled to a stop. For the first time, all color drained from his face. Magda took his elbow. Instead of Matthias forcing the witch forward, Magda urged the hunter to confront the vision ahead. The wet smack of the whip pulled an anguished wail from young Matthias's mouth. "Explain yourself." "I did my duty," cried young Matthias. "No, you followed your conscience, and not your God." Another lash, another scream. "The witch had yet to flower into womanhood. She feared the fire and begged for quick end." "And you took it upon yourself to give her that end," said the man with the whip. "It is my duty." The whip descended 3 times, each strike punctuated by a simple statement. "Your duty is to God." Crack. "Your duty is to the Church." Crack. "Your duty is to the Inquisition." Crack. "I did my duty," young Matthias wailed. "You followed your conscience. You denied that girl the cleansing fire. How will her soul be saved with the stain of the devil still upon it?" "But—" "Yes?" "Oh my God, what have I done?" young Matthias whimpered. "You failed, Hunter." "Yes. Now accept your penance in silence." Young Matthias nodded and clenched his jaw against the screams. The whip struck a steady rhythm against his back. The sound faded into nothing, and the vision fluttered away like ashes on a light breeze. Sounds of a fight exploded further along the bridge. "Demon!" yelled a ragged Matthias ahead of them. He crouched behind a boulder, hidden from his attacker. "You call me demon, yet you are the one who burns and kills, while I only heal," responded an old woman, holding her hand aloft. Lightning crackled between her fingers. "I bring the sacrament of fire to cleanse your soul. You cannot understand now, but I offer salvation, even if your darkened soul does not accept it." "Brainwashed fool!" Lightning exploded from her hands, chipping a large chunk from the boulder. Magda gasped. Evelyn was a powerful woman. The present-day Matthias nodded, his face grim. She fought hard, but in the end, God's will was done. The young Matthias of the vision lifted a sizzling chunk of rock, grunting against the heat burning his hand. He stood and lobbed the stone at Evelyn. The rock crashed squarely into her face as she released another blast of lightning. The witch crumbled to the ground. The lightning bolt blasted Matthias backwards. His left arm smoked. The leather vambrace burnt and cracking. He rolled over and removed the iron manacles from his belt. The witch stirred, so Matthias hurried. Evelyn struggled to strike out. Her hands glowed with a blue flame. Young Matthias swung the shackles down like a morning star. Bones crunched when the metal bashed into her arm. Once the shackles clicked into place around her wrists, young Matthias withdrew a large iron ball and forced it into her mouth. He secured the leather strap over the witch's face to hold the orb in place. "I promise your pain will end, old woman. The kiss of the flames will cleanse your soul, and you will be welcomed into the arms of our Lord." The young Matthias lifted Evelyn from the ground and marched her off into the mists. "I am surprised you have not choked me with iron," said Magda. "You did not put up a fight, nor have you attempted to place a charm upon my mind. I am not without mercy." "Is that so?" whispered Magda. "Have I treated you unfairly, witch?" "Me? No. But can you say the same for all your victims?" "Not victims!" yelled Matthias. "Then what would you call the people you have killed?" "Souls I have saved from the fires of hell. They burned for a moment on earth to be spared an eternity." "And you are sure that every soul you have delivered to the flames would be damned?" Magda asked. "I investigate every case very carefully. You are not like your brethren. We all serve the same God, yet not in the same ways." An orange glow flickered ahead. Matthias stood on the bridge, eyeing it, wary of what visions lay beyond. "Why do you hesitate, Hunter? Afraid of your own past?" Matthias glared at Magda. He pulled her forward. "My past has been in the service to God. I have nothing to fear." Heat emanated in waves over the two travelers before they reached the scene. A sick certainty twisted Matthias' stomach. Death and regret awaited his attendants. Screams echoed over the morass and through the sickly brown willows lining the bridge. Determined to meet the lurking vision, he nearly forgot about Magda, who still trailed behind of her own free will. The blaze at the center of the bog stretched from just under the surface of the water to the top of a thick pole. Two writhing figures struggled against the flames until they became as still as the kindling they stood upon. Younger Matthias watched stone-faced from 10 feet away as the two women burned. He had found them in a cottage a mile outside the border of the village. The elder woman served as midwife to the younger. Neither had the energy to fight after what had sounded like a long, arduous labor. Older Matthias remembered waiting throughout the night with a more senior hunter who was unwilling to fight and capture two witches during the midnight hours. When they attacked, the two women made a feeble attempt to escape, only to find themselves chained and marched back to the village, the pyre already prepared for them. The elder hunter strode from the shadows into the vision, carrying a small bundle. Older Matthias wanted to look away, but chose not to show fear or remorse in front of Magda. "Here," said the hunter beside young Matthias. "We should leave the child with a good Christian family in the village. It is merely a girl, and the rectories and orphanage are filled to bursting. We are not taking the child, nor are we leaving it with a family here." Younger Matthias shot a confused look at his partner, who in turn offered a slight nod toward the burning inferno before them. "But the child isn't innocent, is it? Born of witchcraft and a girl? It surely will grow to plague us in the future. Better be safe and rid of it." But what?" asked the hunter. "I know all about you, Matthias. You were saved, but you were a boy who could be trained. You served a purpose to the church and our noble crusade. What use is a female child born of darkness and destined for godlessness? You made me a promise last night as we listened to the birthing." "Yes," admitted the younger Matthias. "Repeat it now. No mercy." The hunter presented the sleeping babe to Matthias with one outstretched hand. "No mercy." His other rested on the hilt of his sword. Matthias's choice was clear, and there would be no debate. Older Matthias turned away from the scene as his younger counterpart lifted the sleeping child into his arms. He didn't need to relive a moment that still haunted his sleep. The leaves crunched beneath his every step. The tower of death radiated searing heat. The hairs on his arms and face withered. Branches and twigs exploded under the sudden weight of a newborn child tossed at the feet of its charred mother. Matthias hadn't known a baby could scream so loud or for so long. Even after the vision faded away into the midst of the bog, the screams remained. They had remained just on the other side of sleep since that day long ago. "Monstrous," whispered Magda. "Do not judge me, woman. He would have killed me, then the child. It was dead the moment he decided to burn it. I judge not you, but your beliefs, your actions, and your companions. Those things made me, Magda. Not true. Those things are only a part of you. But you can change. You can choose to walk away from those influences. They do not have to define you. You ask that I walk away from the duties and promises I have made. I ask you that you remember the first promise you ever made, and the first one made for you." As if in response, another scene materialized ahead of them. "I have seen this moment, Magda. Why would you show me this again? I do nothing. The swamp chooses the memories to manifest. A low chuckle rumbled in Magda's throat. Do you honestly believe this is your memory? You were not yet even born, child. She gestured at the midwife who stood ready to deliver the infant Matthias. I do not understand. You choose not to understand, and that is fine. The bog will educate you. Matthias approached the woman working to bring his infant self into the world. The baby comes now, Nora. You must push with the waves of pain. That voice. The first time he saw this, his attention focused on Nora, his mother. Now, having been through a number of these visions, new details emerged. The midwife delivering him was Magda, just as old and sharp as the version standing beside him, shackled in iron. How can this be? Watch, Matthias. Midwife Magda once again clotted the bleeding, threatening his mother's life. Teach me. I promise to carry on the traditions and knowledge of what you know. If you desire, but now, sleep. Nora slipped into a deep sleep, while Matthias suckled at her breast. He is a hungry one, midwife, observed an assistant. Yes, 'tis a good sign. He is strong, and I do say he has the look of his grandfather, the same mischievous smile just after his birth. Matthias shook his head, confused. You knew my great-grandfather? Magda exploded with laughter. You might say that. He suckled at my breast much the same way you suckled at your mother's. Matthias crumbled at the knees. What? Magda smacked Matthias across the head. Now stop being foolish. You heard me, child. Midwife Magda leaned over to wipe the infant Matthias clean and whispered, Your mother names you Matthias. I name you Blessed. No matter what, until my last day, I will watch over and protect you. Rest well, child. The swamp chirped and hissed around them. The boards of the old wooden bridge creaked. Mysterious ripples appeared, coasting along the surface of the water, then disappeared. Normally, Matthias would mark each sound, each movement, but revelation struck him none. Had it been hours, days, minutes? Time flowed around the bridge, but did not belong to it. Without the benefit of seeing beyond the thick canopy of wet, decaying foliage, Matthias still sensed the moon glowing above them. He looked at Magda, without the filter and prejudice of a hunter, recognizing familial resonance. Or was this a glamour, a trick to create sympathy and mercy? You were trying to trick me, old woman. I told you I'm not responsible for what the swamp shows you. She jangled the iron shackles for emphasis. You can't be my great-grandmother. It's impossible. Well, truly, I am the great-grandmother of your great-grandmother. Demon deals, growled Matthias. Oh, don't be silly. I am a devout Christian. I abhor your Catholic Church, even though I claim Christ as my Savior. Same as you. Impossible. Just as feeding thousands with a basket worth of fish and bread, or walking on water, water to wine, the resurrection. Blasphemy. Knowledge. You wield forbidden magics, Matthias protested. I practice the same skills taught to me by my mother, who was taught by hers. Ancient knowledge passed down through generations since the time of Adam and Eve. Children of Lilith. Do I look like a hairy beast child? Matthias screamed his frustration out into the swamp. What do you want of me? I kept my word and learned the old ways. I showed mercy where possible. I never showed hatred or malice to those I hunted, even as they tried to kill me. I have kept every promise made, and now, in this God-forsaken pit of mud and disease, you ask I betray the one promise I made to God. It is a promise you made to a madman who claims to know the mind of God. Who is the greater sinner, eh? A man overflowing with greed and hubris, or an old woman helping unfortunate souls who betray her at the first sign of trouble? Which promise is the better? To whom are you loyal, young Matthias? To God. Always to God. Then be loyal to your God's will, not to his corrupt earthly mouthpiece. For such persons do not suffer our Lord Christ, but their own appetites, and by smooth talk and flattery they deceive the hearts of the naive, whispered Matthias. For God is not a God of confusion, but peace, replied Magda. Matthias nodded his head. The weight of the past is heavy. Always. Matthias looked along the length of bridge. In the distance, the swamp opened up, and the light purple sky of twilight glowed against the darkness of rotten vegetation. There is a fork on the road before we reach the village. Matthias fumbled at the keys on his belt. You can find a new place to live. I will say you had already left before I arrived at your homestead. No, I will accompany you back to the village. Are you mad, Magda? The village builds a pyre for you as we speak. Matthias reached for her shackles, ready with the key to release her. She moved her hands to block his attempt, and rested her gnarled old fingers over his dark, scarred ones. No, grandson, this thing must happen. I am old and tired. I cannot send another innocent soul to the flame. After the baby, I found any reason to spare those accused. My superiors knew the stories revolving around you and the village. They knew I could not deny your powers and influence. But now, I cannot do this thing. You can and will, Matthias. If you do not, both of us will be hunted by the church. No, I will meet my end. By my hand. No, you offered me escape. This is no longer your choice. I would ask one more promise from you, though. Yes? Return to this village after you report to your masters. Or find one equally in need. Use the skills your mother taught you. Help those who are too fearful to help themselves. I will try, but it is not an easy thing you ask me to do. Nothing worthwhile ever is. They began to march toward the end of the bridge, and the darkened world beyond the swamp. Matthias rested a hand on his sword. I could offer a quicker end, at least. We all have our promises we are bound by. I promised on the one thing I hold most dear, grandson, that I would return with you. After all these years of watching over you from the shadows, do you think the church learned of me hiding here by accident? I needed to see you before my end, to see if I could pull you back from the darkness. Why would I curse you now by breaking my word, grandson? They emerged from the stagnant swamp into an open field. Starlight illuminated the night sky. Matthias gazed at the tiny pinpricks of light and considered the beauty of the fires of heaven. He prayed that after tonight, those celestial flames would be the only fires he bore witness to until the end of his days.